Matt Sanders para que nos acompañe. Matt se sorprendió, tiene que trabajar. Y también le voy a pedir a George Conrad de Google, que está aquí, para que ya nos puedan acompañar. Creo que las charlas que hemos tenido esta tarde van creando cierta atracción en la CIP. Estamos calentando motores para adentrarnos a una asamblea muy interesante. Creo que ahora empezamos con temas de contenido, con problemas políticos y sobre todo con temas de nuestro core que son sobre libertad de expresión. En los informes que ustedes verán el sábado por la mañana, vamos a tener nuestra gran agenda de discusión de libertad de prensa. Uno de los problemas mayores que estamos enfrentando ahora, los medios en toda América, son parte de la censura digital, parte de los ciberataques, parte de los trolls, parte de los cibermilitantes que abundan en todos los gobiernos o muchos gobiernos populistas de la región que están atacando los medios de comunicación y también a los ciudadanos a través de las redes sociales. Coincidentemente, hace un tiempo atrás, en una gran alianza que estamos formando con Google, muy especialmente aquí a través, representado todo un grupo de Googlers que nos acompañan en esta asamblea, representados especialmente por Flavia Selkes, directora de comunicaciones para América Latina con sede en Sao Paulo, una gran amiga ya de nuestra institución. Hemos venido trabajando y creando ciertas sinergias y justamente eso es de algo realmente muy importante para la Sociedad Interamericana de Prensa y obviamente también para Google, que empezamos a trabajar en conjunto. Sin más, y para hablar ya del proyecto Escudo, el proyecto Shield, quiero presentarles entonces a Matt Sanders para que nos haga la introducción. Gracias, Matt.
Mire que tengo problemas con mi tecnología. It's my pleasure to introduce George. We had a fantastic conversation with him yesterday evening and with the team from Jigsaw. I'm going to read briefly George's remarkable bio, and I'm sure this is just a small part of it. George is a product manager at Jigsaw, currently leading Project Shield, Jigsaw's DDoS mitigation service for news publishers. Prior to joining Jigsaw, George led multiple products in Google's Access Emerging Markets team and drove early product explorations for new ad formats in Google's Search Ads organization. Before joining Google, George was Executive Director of Technology for Microfinance program at the Grameen Technology Center and CEO at Mifos, an open source banking platform for microfinance organizations. He launched the Grameen Foundation's Village Phone program in Rwanda and founded VPR Saro, a joint venture between Grameen Foundation and MTN Rwanda. George previously spent 7 years at Microsoft, where he led product for Microsoft's developer tools in academic markets. After having read George's bio, it makes even more sense now the passion that he shared with us yesterday evening about the desire of Google to truly be a partner with news organizations, to truly protect an open web, to protect our opportunities to free and open discourse and the freedom of expression that we hold so dear here at this organization. So you can see from his own professional DNA an investment in lots of very interesting ways, helping organizations like the Grameen Bank, NGOs, and now the opportunity he has to invest his skills and tools and capabilities in the NGO world and now the journalism world. So please join me in welcoming George. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Good afternoon. And thanks, Matthew, for the very generous introduction. I think the length of the bio is as much a testament to my age as anything else. Oh, that's awesome. If someone will give me a pen or something, I'm going to do the thing that we're really not supposed to do. I'm going to give someone else my password. Seriously. I think that will work. So my password is totally muscle memory. I don't actually know that it's anywhere in my head, so I'm hoping that that will work. I'll start. What you would see here is a lovely little slide with my name on it. And then the next slide, which flashed up a little bit earlier, had the Jigsaw logo on it. I'm really happy and honored to be here today talking with you about the threats facing journalists and facing free press around the world. At Jigsaw, we're set up to help people who are facing lots of different kinds of threats and to tackle some of the hardest global security challenges that are out there, from censorship to terrorism. Jigsaw is a team within Alphabet, which is, of course, Google's parent company. And it was formed about 5 years ago by Google's former CEO, Eric Schmidt, who's now our executive chairman, with a relatively simple mission: to protect the world's most vulnerable populations, to use technology to address hard security challenges, and to build tools against oppression. Our team wakes up every day working on these almost intractable challenges that are facing many of us in different places around the world. And every time we do that, we find that journalists and those who are publishing their stories are on the front lines. Journalists are out there uncovering government oppression. They're finding new threats to free expression. And I'm going to type my password again, because this was great rhetoric, but we got to get the slides up. Excuse me. Can I just hold it up and kind of show everybody what this, does that work? So like I was saying, we work on a lot of really hard challenges, but we do find that journalists are out there on the front lines of trying to tackle these challenges and figure out what we can do about them. What I'm going to talk about today is Project Shield. But first we want to talk about what some of the different threats are that are facing some of the organizations in this room, some of the journalists that we work with around the world. So I'd like to start with a quick show of hands. How many of you in the room know what a DDoS attack is? All right, that's pretty cool. How many of you have been targeted by a DDoS attack, or your organizations have been? Quite a few as well. All right, so we have quite a bit to talk about. I'm just going to keep looking back there, and eventually they'll come up. I wish that I had better news to share. The reality, and you are all more familiar with this than I am, is that press freedom is under attack in different places around the world. War and repressive governments are making it harder and harder to publish the stories that are so important to all of your readers. And Freedom House, in their report last year, found that 61 countries had fallen from more free to less free, and only 31 had grown to become more free. So it's a problem that is really being faced around the world. In Latin America, this problem exists. Press freedom is under attack in both the digital and the physical space, right? Offices are under attack. They're being vandalized. More seriously, journalists are being murdered here in Mexico, in Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and elsewhere. And these threats of violence or intimidation, the legal attacks that are out there are only one set of the challenges that we've got. I'm totally under attack, yeah. Yeah, let's get some heckling going. That'll actually make this a lot more fun. That'd be great, too. What I put in your phone is actually the password. Yeah. Lowercase at the beginning, if that helps. I'm very sorry about this. It is ironic for somebody from Google to be having such interesting technology challenges. Part of the problem, I think, is that I wanted to present from my laptop because I've got a couple of videos to get to along the way. What I was talking about is that the physical threats that are out there are really important. Violence, intimidation, legal threats. But another set of threats that are out there are in the digital space. And many of you raised your hands, and you know what DDoS attacks are. This, to me, is one of the most troubling, kind of new threats to free expression, to the free press, to being able to publish the information that is really important to all of your readers. They are increasingly being used to silence reporting, to suppress free expression. So I want to start by talking a little bit about how DDoS, or distributed denial of service attacks work. So in the audience, I'm going to, hey, applause. There we go. So many of you know what DDoS attacks are. There's probably, I'm not good at counting, let's say about 60 people in the room or so today. And imagine that someone who didn't want you all to hear what I have to say decided they wanted to try and stop you from getting here. So they went out and they hired 10,000 people. Maybe they hired some of the taxi protesters from yesterday. And they put them in the streets and in the hallways and in the doorways into this venue. And as a result, when you came, whether it was down from your room if you're staying at this hotel, or from a different hotel across the street or across the city, you would find that you weren't able to get there. That the pathways, the roads, the ingress points to this room were blocked. And that's essentially what a DDoS attack is, only on the internet. It is when an attacker sends so much traffic, internet traffic, toward a web server that the internet connection gets filled up, or the web server can't handle the traffic anymore, and no one else is able to get to it. You can overwhelm the servers by doing this. And today, there are approximately 125,000 DDoS attacks launched every single, no, I'll get to the 45 million. There are 125,000 attacks launched every day. And that number is expected to double in the next year. So with that volume, which is 45 million per year, 45 million attacks per year, it is no surprise that half of the websites in the world have faced a DDoS attack. And new research indicates that about the same number, approximately 50% of news and media outlets have been attacked, whether you know it or not. And sometimes you don't know when you've been attacked. It looks like a server glitch, or it looks like the tech guy over in the corner, who's me, did something wrong. But these attacks are growing. And what that means is that if we counted off the room and just did 1, 2, 1, 2, if you hadn't been attacked, your neighbor probably has been. And that threat continues to grow and grow. In Latin America, OAS has reported on this. They reported on the Página 12 attack last year, toward the end of last year, and attacks in Brazil. I think there are numbers showing that attacks in Brazil are going up roughly 200% year over year. So it's continuing to grow very, very quickly. And that increasing pace is a function of how easy it is to launch these attacks. If you want to launch an attack, you need internet access and maybe 100 Mexican pesos, about $5. And you can go out on the internet and launch an attack like that. For a little bit more, a few $100s, you can launch an attack that lasts an entire month against a website. And if you don't want to spend the money, you can do it yourself. There are free tools online that you can download and start to launch these attacks. It doesn't take a hacker anymore to be able to launch these attacks. It takes someone with a grievance, a little bit of time, and even less money in a lot of cases. And I don't actually want to see any of you getting up and going back to your hotel room and trying to do this right now. I'd rather not launch any attacks coming out of the conference. It's illegal, but more importantly, we're going to talk also about how you can protect yourselves from these attacks. But this increasing ability for anyone to launch these attacks is leading to really a new era. It's what one of our most recent Shield users, a security journalist named Brian Krebs, has called the democratization of censorship. It's a very powerful, powerful phrase, the democratization of censorship. And what he means is that it is becoming possible for virtually anyone on the planet to attempt to silence a point of view or a story that they don't want to be heard. And we'll talk a little bit more about Brian in a bit, but first I want to talk and look at what the big picture is. So let's actually look at some data. This is a graph that I took, a screenshot that I took earlier this afternoon, actually from our engineering team. This is showing an attack that was happening on one of our sites earlier today. And it looks a little bit crazy. What you have on the left is a number called QPS. What that means is queries or requests per second. This is how many requests toward a web server are coming in every second. And the average, the green line kind of along the bottom that's right there just above 0 is kind of the average amount of traffic that this site tends to see, about 14 or 15 requests per second. If you look at the scale on the left, those numbers go up to 100,000. Right, so the attack that we were seeing today was on the order of 10,000 times the amount of traffic that this site typically sees. And I was chatting with, over Hangouts with our engineers today, and they were working on mitigating this and kind of fending the attackers off. But it gives you a sense of the scale of these type of attacks. So more data. This is something called the Digital Attack Map. The Digital Attack Map is a tool that was built by Jigsaw in conjunction with our partners and friends at Arbor Networks. Arbor is a company that builds security hardware, and they also collect data on DDoS attacks happening around the world. This is taken, I think, from a couple of months ago. It's not real time here, but each of the lines that you see on the screen are a digital attack. Some of the ones coming straight up and out, like this one out of Australia, are places where they aren't able to either determine the target or the origin of where that attack is coming from. And the size and the shape and the color of the different lines that are on there indicate different details about the attacks. This only represents about the top 2% of attacks that Arbor is seeing. Right? So this is just a snapshot of what's actually happening. But it's a growing and global problem that isn't going to end anytime soon. So let's talk about Brian. Some of you may have heard about Brian Krebs either recently with the attack that he faced, and I'll talk about, or more generally. Brian is a former Washington Post reporter. He's a security journalist. He runs an independent blog called KrebsOnSecurity.com. He's probably one of the world's leading investigative journalists looking at digital security issues. And he's uncovered a lot of pretty gnarly things. He's looked at hacking groups and things like that, and along the way, he's made a lot of enemies. And he has seen a lot of DDoS attacks in his time. And a few weeks ago, Brian was faced with the largest DDoS attack that had been reported to that time. And it came as a result of information that he was publishing. It came as the result of a story that he had done on a particular hacking collective. So this, when I think about what we're doing with Project Shield, this is exactly the reason that we have set up this effort. This is a journalist who was reporting on something that somebody doesn't want to get out, and so they launch the biggest attack that has ever been seen against him. So let's talk about what happened. Brian is an experienced security reporter. He knows this space, and so he had gotten DDoS protection services for his website. One of the things that some of you may know, if you're using these services, they often are very good, but they can be very expensive. And this comes into play later in the story. It turns out that Brian was getting the service for free from the company that was actually providing it for him. And he's written pretty extensively on this on his blog. But when the attack came in, it was very, very large. The service that he was using was able to defend his site against this attack, but the attacks kept coming, and they kept coming. And they were really the first large-scale instance of this new, what's called a botnet. A botnet is a network of compromised devices around the world that are used by attackers to try to send all this traffic to take down websites. This was the first of this new botnet of Internet of Things devices. So DVRs, security cameras, very, very large network. And the attacks continued to grow. And eventually the provider who had been protecting him successfully realized that this was going to cost them enormous amounts of money to continue protecting him. And they went to him and they said, "We're very, very sorry, but we've made a business decision that we're not able to do this for you any longer." And so they told him he could not stay on the service. So how powerful was the attack that Brian saw? The average, or an average kind of size for DDoS attacks, tends to be about 5 or 6 gigabits per second. That's the amount of data that's being thrown at the site to try to take it down. 5 or 6 gigabits per second. The attack targeting Brian was 100 times the size of that. over 600 gigabits per second. This, in a world of cannons that are 5 or 6 gigabits, was a nuclear missile directed at his site because of what he was publishing. And to put that number in context, 600 gigabits per second is roughly equivalent to 100,000 streaming movies from Netflix being streamed simultaneously in high definition. 100,000 movies all at once being thrown at his website to keep it up and running. And that left Brian with a dilemma. Could he go out and pay for very expensive commercial service? Did he have to take his site down? Or did he have to run the risk of the next time he was ready to publish a story that he was going to get attacked again and pull it down? And so Brian ended up finding out about Project Shield. He applied for the service. We helped him to get online. He's been seeing a lot of attacks since then, but we've been able to keep him up and running and accessible. And I'm showing this story really for 3 reasons. I think it's, in general, it's helpful to understand, a very specific case. You can relate to someone who's in the business and has seen this. But, Brian's getting this attack. First reason I wanted to share it is this is a serious threat to publishers everywhere in the world. This is not only something that happens in the Ukraine, where we protected sites a couple of years ago during Euromaidan, or in other parts of the world. It is really a threat to publishers everywhere. Second is that while there are mitigation services out there, they tend to be very expensive. And getting the financial resources to be able to protect sites from that can be challenging, especially for the small and medium-sized publishers who are out there, who may not have the financial resources to actually defend themselves. And the third reason I wanted to share this is, Brian is a very savvy security guy. Even he got caught off guard by this. Even the best prepared among us, no matter what we're doing, can get caught off guard. And so part of what I want to do today is leave you with a sense that this is something to pay attention to, something to be thinking about and watching for. And it's not just Brian, right? The number of reports of DDoS attacks have been kind of exploding this year. There are lots more attacks that happen than actually get reported on. Not everyone is comfortable sharing what is happening. But the BBC reported that they were taken down on New Year's Eve of last year. The BBC, I've been in their technology department. It's like multiple floors in a building. They have a lot of engineers working there. In Sweden, in March, these 7 top news publishers in Sweden were all taken down at the same time on March 19th for several hours. Just about a week and a half ago, Newsweek was taken offline by a DDoS attack for a period of time, right after they had published a story about a certain presidential candidate that we have in the US. Don't know if they're related or not in one way, but the point is this is something that threatens everyone and that you really need to be prepared for. So I've been talking a lot about scary things and bad news, right? But this isn't all about bad news. I want to talk about some good news as well. It's my pleasure to announce today that we at Jigsaw and Google are going to be partnering with ZIP, IAPA, I get confused about which one to say, with IAPA, to partner together to ensure that all IAPA member organizations are protected from DDoS attacks. And we're also formally launching Project Shield in Latin America today. And the goal of this campaign is to ultimately eliminate DDoS as a form of censorship throughout Latin America. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about what that means, a little bit more about how Project Shield works, and why you shouldn't leave this conference without making sure that your sites are protected, and if they're not, if Project Shield is appropriate for you, coming and applying for it. So when we first started looking at DDoS attacks a few years ago at Jigsaw, we had 2 striking insights that came together. One is that some of the most vulnerable organizations in the world to these types of attacks are those that have information that's incredibly important and that a lot of people might want to suppress. News publishers, journalists, human rights organizations, elections monitoring sites. And they tend to be those who do not have the financial or technical resources to defend themselves. The second part of the insight was that at Google, we see a lot of these DDoS attacks. We're one of the biggest targets, I think, in the world. And we've built over the years with our engineering team some very, very sophisticated and strong defenses against them. And we thought, what if we could bring those things together and use Google's defenses to defend those who are not able to do it for themselves? And so we started testing this in a few different places with a few different publishers in different places around the world, in the Ukraine, in Hong Kong, during the Thai political crisis as well. And then last year, we launched an actual product based on those experiments called Project Shield to a handful of trusted testers to really work out the kinks of it, make sure that we could find ways to make it easier to use. And then earlier this year, we released it publicly out of that trusted tester into a general availability state. So what I'd like to do now, and everybody cross their fingers with me that we get the video and the sound on this. There's a short video that I'd like to play that should talk a little bit about Project Shield. If it doesn't, we'll just keep going. If I hit play again. Nope. There you go. Thank you. Invisible hand.
Every day, news organizations, large and small, use the web to report on events and stories. Often, they're the only voices keeping readers informed of what's actually happening. Silencing news organizations.
I'm actually just going to run back there and
extreme measures of force. Every day, news organizations, large and small, use the web to report on events and stories. Often, they're the only voices keeping readers informed of what's actually happening. Silencing news organizations like these used to require extreme measures of force. But now, attacks on free speech can be carried out by almost anyone with access to a computer. A simple, inexpensive denial of service attack, or DDoS for short, can cause a news site to crash and keep the world in the dark about what's happening on the ground. So we created Project Shield, a free service that uses Google technology to protect news sites and freedom of speech on the web. Right now, news organizations of all sizes are being protected by Project Shield, but there is still too much of the world's news and reporting at risk. If you are a journalist operating a news site and are concerned about the possibility of a DDoS attack, we can help. Visit g.co/shield. Take 2 minutes to fill out the simple form on our secure site, and upon verification, your site will be enrolled, and soon after, protected. There's no way to know if or when an attack will occur, but if it does, there's a good chance it will be the moment your readers and the world need you most.
Next slide. Great, thank you. So how does Project Shield work? I will admit to feeling a little bit like Beyonce going backstage and getting my mic all fixed up and things like that along the way. I'm going to get a little bit technical here. Don't be afraid, it's actually a pretty simple concept. But this is stuff that I find super interesting. I'm an engineer, right? And if you're the kind of person who kind of glazes over when things get technical and you want to check your email or you want to tweet about this and the announcement that we just made, please feel free to do so. If you do tweet, and by all means, please do tweet, please use the hashtag up there for Project Shield. So how many of you know what a proxy is or have heard of a proxy in computer networking? Great. How many of you have heard of or know what a reverse proxy is? Okay, still not bad, a few people. So a reverse proxy is essentially what Project Shield is. And what it means is that internet traffic coming toward a web server first passes through Project Shield, and then we proxy that traffic onto the web server after we've filtered out the attacks that are happening. As we're doing that, if we're able to serve from the cache, and I'll talk a little bit more about caching later, we do that. Otherwise, the request goes right to the origin server where the content is being published and gets passed back to the user who had requested it. And there are three words that I want you to remember about Project Shield: safer, faster, and cheaper. Project Shield is safer. It's using the defenses that Google has built to defend ourselves to protect your website from attack. Project Shield is also faster by caching content, and what caching means is that we're storing a copy of frequently accessed content on our servers. We are able to serve that back out to users very, very quickly to give them a highly performant experience, a really good experience with your website. You're, of course, always in control of what gets cached and how, or if you even want things to be cached. One of the added benefits of caching content is it reduces the load on your server and can reduce your bandwidth costs as well. And Project Shield is cheaper. It's free. It doesn't get any cheaper than free. And we don't put any caps on how much traffic can come in or the size of attack that we will defend against and keep it in that free state. So Shield is safer, it's faster, it's cheaper, and as a bonus, it's very easy to use. We've done a lot of work to make sure that Shield is very accessible to publishers of any size, whether it's that one individual independent journalist or a large publisher as well. It's easy to apply, it takes about a minute. It's easy to set up. Most sites can be set up in 5 to 10 minutes on Project Shield. And if you need help, our team in New York is available to answer questions that you have, help you figure out how to do a test drive of this, to try it out on your servers, see if it integrates the way that you want to into the systems that you've got. So far, we've talked about what Shield is and how it works. And what I'd like to do now is share a story about why I think Shield matters so much. In countries that are repressive, or have very few news sites, there might be only a few sites in the country that actually provide objective information to the citizens of that country that need it. In Angola, there's one site in a country of 20 million people that is providing objective, independent reporting to the citizens of that country. Freedom House has ranked Angola as not free, so it's not terribly surprising that this has happened. And in Angola, it is very easy to silence the news when people try to get it up and actually publish it for people. And DDoS is one of the most common means of doing that. And we met Rafael, and the video is going to play in a minute. Rafael Marquez is that independent investigative journalist who is running that one site in Angola. And when he is silenced, the country who relies on him, there are ripples that go through the countryside as the news becomes unavailable. So let's hear a little bit about Rafael's story.
When I was a child in Angola, I loved comics. I loved that sense of justice. So I became a journalist. I took my first job to the state newspaper, but exposing the truth made me the prime target of my government. One night, I was arrested. I saw the worst in human behavior. And it touched me so deeply that I said, I have to do something about it. And I started bringing all these stories out for the public knowledge.
Chegaram, não avisaram. Começaram a partir as casas.
So I set up NAC Angola. And today, it's the leading news website here, even though it's an operation from a kitchen table. But then the government set up new strategies to control the internet. My site would crash every 20 seconds. I was told it was a DDoS attack where the site would get 2-3 million hits within seconds. I thought, well, I need some help. I was searching everywhere. And then I found Project Shield, which provides protection for this type of attack. Now the website is secure. And that gives me a bit of time to focus on reporting the truth for the citizens of my country. Pode explicar o que aconteceu no Monson?
As pessoas que estavam lavar embaixo na lagoa.
Because of our reporting, people now know it's not this absolute all-powerful government. For me, the greatest power of all is that of goodwill and how you harness it for the good of the people.
So Raphael's story really reminds me of the scale of the problem and how far we have to go to get all of the world's news protected and available to the readers when we need it. At Jigsaw, we have a mission to help protect the free press. But as long as someone with $5 and a wireless internet connection can take down a site at will, the press is not going to be free. You know, as long as news organizations fear going bankrupt because they are trying to pay for the protection that's needed to keep their site up and running, the press is not going to be free. And as long as small publishers, especially those who are the only ones in a country like Raphael, as long as those small publishers really have no options, they don't even have the money to be able to spend on DDoS mitigation services, as long as those publishers are sitting on stories because they fear publishing them because the rest of their stories will be accessible, the press is not free. So I'm here today because I think that Shield can make a meaningful difference in trying to solve this problem. And I'm not crazy. I don't think that Shield is the solution to every problem. Shield solves DDoS, and it solves it for free. It solves that one problem. And so I want to leave you today with a promise. I don't want you to think that we at Jigsaw are naive, that we think that writing a few lines of code and putting these defenses up are going to solve all of the world's problems. I think the road to achieving true press freedom is very long, and it's winding, and it's dark. But I see pockets of light along the way that will help get us there. So here's the deal, and here's my promise. I would like to get to the point where you will invite me back to the General Assembly in a few years, and I would like to be able to stand on this stage with people from IAPA and to be able to announce that together we have eliminated DDoS as a form of censorship throughout Latin America. That goal is actually within our grasp, and I promise that I will do everything I can, and my team will do everything that they can to make that a reality. All you have to do is apply and get protected. Thank you very much.